Well, the internet surfing, so to speak, is like entering the subconscious dream mind, or the semi-conscious, where you find you're thinking and developing some realistic picture, and they don't seem to be necessarily related. You know, two episodes, you look at one, if we come back to the web, I might look at one video and then flip to another. They're not connected, they're just available. And, well, I went from one to the other because that's what was listed on the screen, perhaps, as possible things that might interest this particular viewer. There is an algorithm type selector going on, but they're not choosing it from the point of view of, if you like, truly knowing me and what's of value to me and what I would choose. And so I see, oh yes, that's a video on sinking of a ship, and oh, there's a video on ancient Persia, that's interesting, and oh, there's another video on how to make a cup of tea, you know, a health drink that's good for you, and oh, that's interesting, that's something about London, which, you know, grabs me because I recognise that spot or something. And then, having tapped on it, so to speak, I watch, or begin to watch, part of what the video is. And then I think, oh, this isn't really interesting, I'll flip to another one, and I'm now watching something about the geology of North Island, New Zealand, perhaps. Oh yeah, oh well, I've seen that before, I don't want to go through that. And so I wander on, you see. Now, the disadvantage of the dreaming state is that you can find yourself involved in a dream that is frightening, for instance. You know, it's a nightmare, or it's unwholesome in some way. And in one's waking conscious view of oneself, you'd rather not have that happen to you. So you want to know how to control the dream state, quite simply, so you don't have bad dreams, you have no dreams or good dreams. Now, this analysis hasn't mentioned God, I might point out, and it may be that our subconscious dream state in particular is something of the teaching that God is giving us, just like the experience of the conscious state is. And it is actually being directed, and we are going through a series of experiences which God is selecting and allowing. You know, it's a sort of a tremendous upgrade on Google we're talking about now. God is selecting what you're dreaming, perhaps. You know, perhaps this is the case. And it's all part of his lessons and training for us to become wonderful eternal souls, you know, happy in the kingdom of heaven, host of heaven, etc. Now, if I come back to the web in the conscious state, it's, well, it's arguably me at the helm, choosing from a menu that crops up by Google, if you like. But then, I mean, you could take it that God is infinitely greater than Google. And what Google has as its algorithm to find suitable interests for me on the web is in fact subject to God's direction. In fact, unbeknown to Google, perhaps. And what I'm saying is that in the conscious state, when you're surfing the web, you are at least interacting with what comes up as a possible selection and choosing. And of course there are ways of choosing where you can, the conscious mind, according to your values. And of course if your values are to, seek God most earnestly, then you will be selecting according to that criteria. If on the other hand, your goal at the minute is just to relax and find something, quotes, of interest, then you may just take what comes up on the menu, because in some measure the menu is selecting out what seems to have been your interest in the recent past. Well, in which case I'm saying the difference is actually, from a trusting in the existence of God perspective, that the dream state does not have Google. And it may be that from a secular perspective, in the conscious state of surfing the web may not have God, at least in regard to the consciousness of the person who's surfing. Let me review a sec. Well, we can make a conscious state in the effort, in the waking state, to steer our selection according to what our values are. So I can avoid deliberately dwelling upon negative things, criticisms, judgments, bad scenarios, bad imaginations about what I'd do to take revenge or something awful like that. I can steer the conscious mind, with the conscious mind, what the conscious mind does. Is there a safeguard or a way I can come in and protect the dream state? Well, if the dream state, and indeed if the conscious state, is actually 100% determined by God's will, then there's no point, no need. I mean, it'd be madness to do something that's contrary to God, your God, who purely has what you feel your values are. Of course, if it's another God, that's quite different. But I mean, you know, if it's someone else's God that's actually running the show, well, then the two of you are at war with each other in some degree. There's a mismatch going on. But anyway, assuming, well, either situation, but let's assume that, I would like to anyway, that God is the reality of the waking state, but that he gives us a freedom, and we're to use the freedom of the conscious mind according to our values indeed, as seen by us in the conscious mind. What we're really saying is, should I take the conscious mind into the subconscious and steer it? Well, superficially, I think at least the answer is no, because we're not given generally a conscious mind in the dream state, and this may be for a good reason if God exists. You know, if we can trust in God. If, on the other hand, you're not that trusting in your God, then you want to take some of your conscious control into the subconscious mind of dreaming to direct so that you don't have really nasty dreams as you see it. How important is this purpose, this goal, to do so, to enter the subconscious mind with a consciousness? Well, you would have destroyed the dream state to the extent that you've got a consciousness leading it. It's now no longer what the dreaming would have been. And it may be, of course, that the dream state is precisely there, that you go through lessons you would not choose in the conscious state. And then one would have to say, right, well, does God exist? Do I believe he exists, so to speak, you know? You, the individual, do you believe? In which case, perhaps you can just leave things as they are, not try to drag your conscious mind into it. Or does he actually find a situation where it's a benefit and blessing to you to take some conscious mind into the subconscious state, to guide it as you would your conscious mind when waking? And that's a possibility too, isn't it? After all, he's allowed you in the waking state to have a conscious mind. It's good in that situation. Is it good from God's point of view, our God, namely with our values, a God of our values? Is it good that we have conscious control, or influence at least, over the subconscious of the dream world? Not sure. I'm not sure, because the dream state is a subconsciousness that's beyond my grasp at present of the conscious mind. I don't know why we have a dream state, and these seemingly random dreams crop up at times when you're asleep. Suppose, analysing it from the conscious state, we would say, well, hang on, I want to trust in a God that rules all things, so he rules the unconscious as well. This is not a problem I need to worry about. There's so much that we can be happily dismissive of if we take this view, isn't it? You know, God rules, so let's not worry too much about it. As in the conscious state, where it's a mix of good and evil, and always has been as far as we can see, going back to the Garden of Eden sort of historicity. I'll leave it to him. Our lack of certainty in this regard, though, may lead us to think, what can I do to improve my dreaming so that I don't have bad dreams? Well, I can arch round the problem of the what to do and whether by actually not making a decision one way or the other, of arriving at a state where I don't feel I need to. And that is, let me take this scenario. If in the conscious state I practice thinking that which is good and on that which is good and lovely, isn't there a great tendency for my dream state at night to continue accordingly? That in some sense I take this algorithm of search automatically, because in some sense, if the dream state at night is controlled by my mind, then I can trust that it's using the algorithm that my mind uses, which is to think on things that are good and lovely. So I don't have to worry now about directly controlling with the conscious mind the dream state. I simply continue dwelling on that which is good and lovely in the conscious state, and this will transform my dreaming and at night, and also my sort of daydreaming during the day too, because I constantly remind myself in the conscious world that I wish to think on that which is good and lovely. This is the most beneficial, and I shall return to doing this every time my mind wanders off it. And I train my mind to be such that it does accordingly. And if it's my mind that's being used in the subconscious state, then I will have solved the problem of avoiding nightmares by my habit from the conscious state that's fashioned my mind structure and the algorithms that I use in the search, so to speak. Well, I think I might stop there. I'm rather happy with that conclusion. I've come to a conclusion. I don't have to worry about controlling the dream world. I can, in some sense, leave it in God's pristine hands. Is that the right word? You know, perfect will and hands and care. And all I have to do is continue in what I took to be the best policy anyway in the conscious mind. Continue practicing just thinking on whatsoever is good and lovely, because that will solve the dream thing if I have conscious control at all, option over it. Otherwise, I, in all faith and trust, wish to suppose that God will do the ruling of my conscious and subconscious and unconscious minds. No problem. For He's God. I have that assurance. And when I say dwell upon that not whatsoever is good and lovely, I'm assuming that therefore such will generate gratitude, of course, within me, and that this brings all spiritual good in all dimensions in our individuality. Thank you, Dad.